It's me, again, figurative language. Today, I'm going to be reading you a story. I'm not going to stop and tell you what kinds of figurative language are here. Your assignment will be to tell me about 3 times in the story that you notice some kind of figurative language. There will be lots more than that, but I only want you to write down 3. It will be a written assignment. So what I want you to do before I start reading is get a piece of paper, something to write with, and be ready to pause my video when you hear me use any of these kinds of figurative language. Pause the video, jot down a little note, and that's what you're going to use to complete the assignment. You have to listen very carefully. You can watch the video as many times as you need to find 3. Let's review them again. Figurative language is when the author uses words that don't mean exactly what they say. So, a simile compares things using like or as. A metaphor compares things without using like or as. By saying something like, that car is a boss. Well, a car is a car, not a person. It's a figure of speech that means the car is cool. Hyperbole, a funny exaggeration that's way, way, way too exaggerated to ever be true. Personification, when the author gives human characteristics to something that is not human. Onomatopoeia, those are sound words. They're super easy to find. Crash, bang, boom, pow, whoosh, swish, meow, anything like that. And our last, alliteration. Those are a bit harder to find. Alliteration is when several words in order all begin with the same letter. The book that I read to you before about the foxes was kind of an extreme alliteration. Most of the time, we don't have a book in which most of the words start with one single letter, but watch for alliteration. Now, this book is called Hurricane. It's actually written by someone, Jonathan London, and he was actually in a hurricane. He lived near where there was a hurricane when he was a boy, and this book is written about his experience. Here we go. Hurricane by Jonathan London and Henry Sorensen. The day of the hurricane started a lot like any other day. After breakfast, Jeff and I checked our shoes for scorpions, then went outside to play. El Yunque, the biggest mountain in Puerto Rico, loomed over us as we scrambled down the cliff to the ocean. The breeze was soft and the sea was calm inside the coral reef. Far out, a giant stingray flapped its wings across the waves. Our fins slapped as we waded in, watching for the sharp black spines of sea urchins. We pulled our masks down, kicked out toward the reef, breathing through our snorkels, and dived down. Sea fans waved, fire corals flamed, schools of tropical fish flashed by like flocks of birds turning in a wind. While langostas, tasty Puerto Rican lobsters, hid in dark cracks in the huge reef. We came up for breath. and everything around us had changed. The sky had turned deep purple, crowded with clouds. The air was perfectly still, with not a whisper of breeze. I felt as if my breath were being sucked from my lungs. We swam ashore and climbed up the rocks. Mom raced from the house. A hurricane! She panted. It's coming our way. Our house could be blown right off its stilts. Hurry up, Mom told us. Pack quickly. I ran inside and packed my baseball mitt and ball, my shooting marbles, slinky, and yo-yo. Then I rushed out to put my bike away. Fists of wind pounded me, punching me sideways. The palm trees bent and thrashed in a wild dance. The wind was pushing the waves into mountains. They broke over the coral reef, then crashed against the rocks in a burst of spray as high as our cliff. Batten down the hatches, Dad shouted in his old Navy talk as he slammed the storm shutters. I tried to whistle for Tristy, but no sound came. The sky was alive. Lightning scribbled on the dark clouds that had buried El Yonke. Thunder shook the earth. Suddenly, Tristy leaped into my arms and almost knocked me down. The palms, whipping crazily, slung coconuts at us. Everyone piled into the car. I was crammed into the back seat beside Jeff and a suitcase. Tristy sat on my lap and whimpered. The moment Dad drove off, the sky fell. Rain slammed into us like a crashing wave. All the way to the shelter, we drove through rain, so solid it was like driving underwater. The shelter was an old Navy barracks where sailors used to live. Babies cried, and grown-ups bustled around, and kids yelled at one another. I sat on a sagging bunk bed and hugged Tristy. Suddenly, with a loud crash, the wind ripped a shutter off. Glass shattered. The hurricane roared in as the lights went out. Mom lit a kerosene lamp. Dad and two other men shoved some metal lockers in front of the broken window. I helped too. The barracks shivered and creaked like an old ship at sea. Nails squeaked in the wood as if they were trying to hold the whole building together. Somebody started to sing, so quietly at first that I thought I was just hearing things. But her voice grew stronger. Jeff joined in, then my folks and I. Soon everybody in the shelter was singing Silent Night, Noche de Paz, Noche de Amor. Christmas was months away, but no one cared. The singing made us feel better. Finally, halfway through the night, the wind died down. The rain stopped hammering. All was silent. Well, it's over, Dad said. Mom gave me a big hug. When we got home, the yard was littered with coconuts and palm fronds, but the roof was still on our house, and our house was still on its stilts. We were lucky. We heard on the radio that just 50 miles away, a tin shack shanty town had been flattened by wind and waves. The next morning, Jeff and I started cleaning up our yard. The sky and the sea were rosy and calm. Above us, unbelievably green, stood El Yonque. It was tall and peaceful as ever, as if nothing at all had happened. Vamonos! I shouted to Jeff. Let's go! We raced down the cliff path to the beach. The sparkle of the sun on the water was brighter than ever. Now, this was an amazing story of this little boy's experience. I would have been terrified. I would not want to live somewhere there was a hurricane all the time. Hopefully you saw a couple of funny faces while I was reading. A little bit of a clue to where some of that figurative language was. Again, simile uses like or as. Metaphor does not. Metaphor is when you say something is something else. The sun is a burning ball of excitement. Hyperbole, an extreme exaggeration. I went fishing and I caught a fish the size of a killer whale. Personification, when something that's not human acts in a human way. The wind drumming its fingers on the window, or the moonlight's fingers touching down. Onomatopoeia, crash, bang, boom, swish, flash, crash. And alliteration, when more than one word in a row begins with the same letters in writing. I want you to give me 3 examples from this story of any of this kind of figurative language. Send me a message if you get stuck.